Welcome back to the next video in my series called When Government Turned Its Guns on the People. It's a hard-hitting historical deep dive series examining the moments in American history when state power collided violently with the rights of citizens. Each episode will break down what happened, who was involved, the legal justifications that were used, and how the media framed it, as well as, most importantly, what it meant for the Second Amendment and constitutional limits on government force. From standoffs and confiscations to domestic military deployments and armed civil resistance, viewers will learn the historical context, the legal fallout, the precedents set, and the long-term impact on gun policy and civil liberties. The series isn't just about recounting the dramatic events, it's about understanding how power operates, how rights are tested under pressure, and the lessons that these flashpoints hold for Americans today. And today we're diving into one of the most controversial and defining flashpoints between armed American citizens and the federal government in modern history. The 2014 Bundy Standoff in Bunkerville, Nevada. You've heard the headlines. You've seen the images. Armed ranchers on overpasses, federal agents in tactical gear, and helicopters circling desert cattle. But what really happened? Who was involved? Was this about grazing fees or something much bigger? And what does it mean for the relationship between citizens and federal authority? Today we're breaking it all down from start to finish. Cliven Bundy is a fourth-generation rancher whose family had grazed cattle in Clark County, Nevada since the late 1800s. The land in question is managed by the Bureau of Land Management, commonly known as BLM. Not that BLM. Here's the key issue. Most of the land in Nevada, nearly 85%, is federally owned, which I still don't understand because the feds don't even have a way to make money. They steal it from us, so how can they own anything? But ranchers who graze cattle on federal land pay fees for grazing permits. More larceny of the people. Bundy stopped paying those federal grazing fees in 1993. Why? Well, he argued that the federal government did not have constitutional authority to own or control that much land within a sovereign state. He recognized the authority of Clark County and the state of Nevada, but not Washington, D.C. He believed federal land management policies were forcing ranchers out. From 1993 forward, Bundy refused to renew permits and refused to pay fees. Over the next 20 years, the BLM issued administrative orders. Federal courts ruled against Bundy. Bundy continued grazing his cattle without permits. By 2014, the federal government claimed that he owed over $1 million in unpaid fees and penalties. In 1998, and again in 2013, federal courts ruled that Bundy was trespassing on federal land. Judges ordered the removal of cattle, payment of fees, prohibition from future grazing without permits, and, of course, Bundy refused. The courts authorized the BLM to impound and remove his cattle, and that's where things escalated. In early April of 2014, the BLM launched what it described as a lawful cattle impoundment operation. They brought in armed federal agents, contract cowboys, helicopters, tactical units, snipers positioned in elevated overwatch positions, just to name a few. And the BLM also established First Amendment areas designated protest zones. They also set up road closures. In addition to road closures, they set up a temporary federal presence in Bunkerville. To many locals and activists, this did not look like routine civil enforcement. It looked like militarization, and word spread quickly online. Within days, armed supporters began arriving from multiple states. Oath keepers, militias, 2A activists, ranchers, citizens concerned about federal overreach, and the standoff was underway. The most dramatic moment occurred on April 12th of 2014. Hundreds of armed civilians gathered near an interstate overpass along I-15. Federal agents were positioned below in a wash area near the cattle holding site. Weapons were visible on both sides. Snipers were reportedly positioned. Protesters demanded, "Release the cattle." The situation was tense, extraordinarily tense. One miscalculation could have resulted in bloodshed, and after hours of confrontation, the BLM made a stunning announcement. They would cease the operation. They would release the cattle. They cited public safety concerns, escalating tensions, and the potential for violence. So the cattle were released. The federal agents withdrew. No shots were fired. No one was killed. And that fact alone is quite remarkable. To understand the intensity, you have to look at the broader context. This was post-Ruby Ridge, post-Waco, post-Fast and Furious. And many Americans had already lost trust in federal agencies, particularly those operating in armed enforcement roles. The images of federal snipers overlooking a ranch family's property triggered a visceral reaction. To supporters, Bundy symbolized a stand against federal land control, to resistance to bureaucratic overreach, and defense of local sovereignty. To the critics, Bundy was a lawbreaker, a man who ignored court rulings, and someone benefiting from public land without paying. Two very different narratives collided in the Nevada desert. The story didn't end in 2014. In 2016, Cliven Bundy was arrested. So were his sons, Ammon Bundy and Ryan Bundy, and several supporters as well. Charges included conspiracy, assault on federal officers, obstruction, and federal offenses for firearms. Now, this was tied not only to the Nevada standoff, but also to the later 2016 occupation of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge in Oregon. The federal government pursued aggressive prosecution. But in 2017 and 2018, something significant happened. A federal judge dismissed major charges with prejudice due to prosecutorial misconduct. The court found that the government failed to disclose exculpatory evidence, information regarding sniper positioning and use of force assessments that had not been properly turned over to the defense, and that the case then collapsed. The charges against Cliven Bundy and others were dismissed. And unlike Ruby Ridge or Waco, no one died at Bundy Ranch, and that is crucial. But there were consequences. Years of legal battles, financial devastation for defendants, political polarization, and increased scrutiny of militia movements. They also expanded federal monitoring of domestic extremism, and some participants later faced unrelated charges in separate matters. The reputational damage was significant for both sides. What does this mean constitutionally? There are three major constitutional debates embedded in this standoff. Number one, federal land ownership. Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution grants Congress authority over federal property. The Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld broad federal power to manage public lands. Bundy's argument was rooted in state sovereignty, the equal footing doctrine, and 10th Amendment principles. However, courts have consistently rejected claims that the federal government lacks authority to own Western lands. Number two, Second Amendment implications. The presence of armed civilians complicated the narrative for the feds. Under the current Supreme Court precedent, including the District of Columbia versus Heller, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, the individuals have and had the right to keep and bear arms for lawful purposes. But the court has also recognized that the government may regulate firearms in sensitive places. Armed resistance to lawful court orders is not a protected conduct. So the key distinction becomes, is armed presence a protest, or is it intimidation, or is it insurrection? That line is legally complex and politically explosive. Number three was the militarization of federal agencies. Images of tactical units enforcing civil grazing disputes fueled broader conversations about proportionality in federal enforcement, use of force policies, and whether civil rights disputes should involve tactical teams. Even some critics of Bundy questioned whether the federal government escalated unnecessarily. For many in the Second Amendment world, Bundy Ranch became symbolic. It was viewed as citizens drawing a line, government backing down, and a demonstration that armed presence deterred federal force. For others, it raised concerns like armed standoffs damage the public image of lawful gun owners, or escalation inviting crackdown legislation, and it feeds narratives about extremism. Regardless of perspective, it changed the national conversation. Here are the hard realities. Federal court orders carry legal weight. Armed confrontation between citizens and federal agents is extraordinarily rare and can be very dangerous, obviously. And escalation typically benefits nobody. Transparency and proportional enforcement matter. And prosecutorial misconduct erodes public trust. The Bundy standoff didn't end in tragedy, but it easily could have. And in modern America, that's a razor-thin margin. Patriots, this event sits at the intersection of federal authority, state sovereignty, individual rights, armed protest, public land policy, and the Second Amendment. It is not a simple good guys versus bad guys story. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when distrust between citizens and government reaches a boiling point. And whether you agree with Bundy or not, the images from Nevada are a reminder of just how fragile civil order can be when both sides believe they are defending constitutional principles. If you value deep dive breakdowns like this, historical, constitutional, and factual, make sure you are subscribed to Guns and Gadgets. And drop a comment down below. Do you believe the federal government overstepped, or was this simply enforcement of the rule of law? Let's keep it respectful. Let's keep it informed. And as always, stay armed, stay free. I'll see you on the next one. And by the way, I'm one who sides with we the people. We got it right. The federal government was overstepping, and tactical teams for grazing cattle. Come on now.